The story begins with a man questioning a woman named Katarina, asking if she's aware that Tillman Castle, visible in the distance, has stood undefeated against any enemies for over 200 years. The man introduces himself as Simon, but Katarina, clearly uneasy, urges him to focus, reminding him they shouldn't even be here and need to leave immediately. He tells her it's okay, as no one will be here right now. She tries to tell him that she needs to finish her cleaning duties. He says that it won't take too long, and that he really wanted to show her the scenery from this place, as it looks especially amazing at this time of day. She asks why it matters if it looks amazing, saying it's just the land of the nobles which they can't live in. Simon then tells her that he might actually be able to buy a house there, as he's going to get promoted to an intermediate mage this time around. He wrote a thesis on a new golem, and his seniors really liked it. They said that if the elder acknowledges it as well, then he'll likely be promoted. While it won't be a big house, it should be big enough for the two of them to live comfortably in. We see her surprised by that, and then he asks her to marry him. He says that she suffered a lot for his sake this entire time, and starting now, he'll make her the happiest person in the world. She then gets a bit playful and says that before he says anything like that, he should probably become an intermediate mage first. He calls her mean, and she laughs, saying that she's just kidding and that she wasn't expecting that such a day would come for them. As she starts to lean on his shoulder, Simon says that he thought they could truly be happy because he worked really hard for their happiness. But then the harsh reality kicks in, as the elder actually took credit for his golem work. Another man says that the thesis he wrote will change the world. The elder is talking to a duke and says that's all too flattering, and this is all thanks to his unreserved investment. Simon, hearing all of his credit being stolen, starts to tune them out, but he's actually feeling anger. He says that his beliefs were wrong. Even if he works hard for the rest of his life, he'll never truly be given credit and will just keep rotting away. The duke then asks the elder about the request he made, and the elder says he hasn't forgotten about that. He asks the duke if he's really fine with her, since she's just a woman of lowly birth. Some guards enter the room, and Simon turns, seeing them bringing in Katarina forcefully. We see they actually roughed her up a bit, and she's very scared. Simon's surprised as he didn't expect to see her here at all. He watches as they take her up to the duke, and Simon starts to lose it, saying he's tired of them walking all over him. The duke said he heard she was pretty famous for her looks, and it's just as he expected. The elder says if she wasn't of lowly birth, she would have lived a vastly different life. Simon starts to get pissed, saying that everything he had lived desperately to protect is being taken, and he asks how they can live with themselves so carefree when they are constantly destroying those around them. We see him preparing some kind of magic attack with tears in his eyes. He starts to run at the two of them, telling them that he will not let them take Katarina from him. The elder starts to get annoyed while releasing lightning magic, calling him a brat and asking if he really doesn't know his place, saying he's nothing but trash as he strikes him down with the lightning. Simon's glasses then break as he starts to fall over. Katarina starts to cry and scream, begging for him to get back up. All he can do is stretch his hand out as she is being taken away from him. It goes black, and then jumps to some time later. We see Simon on his knees, looking devastated inside of a prison cell. The only thing accompanying him are some rats, and his eyes look void of life. He says there was nothing he could do. He picks up one of the rats, causing it to start freaking out. We see he's even been marking his days in the cell. One of the guards then pokes him with a spear, laughing, saying it looks like he's trying to eat that mouse. They say they should just leave him be, as even a mage of the magic tower is worth nothing in this state. They start mocking him, saying that he went completely crazy after the woman died. They decide to leave him alone and start discussing her death, informing us that Katarina committed suicide so she could protect her purity from the duke as she was sold off to him. They say it's a shame, as she was too pretty to die. Simon puts his thumb up to his mouth, biting his nail and pulling it off to the point where blood starts to spill out. He apologizes to Katarina for letting such things happen to her. As the guards are walking back, they notice the mice acting up. They say it's as if they're waiting for something because they're all looking up in anticipation. The other guard immediately realizes something is off and gets the other guard to stab one of them. As soon as he does, we see a magic circle on one of the mice's bellies. They now understand what's going on, and that this is bad, because these are the mice from Simon's cage. We see him using his blood to start drawing something on the floor, as he says he was just too weak to begin with, but that he will change from now on. The guards quickly run over, telling him to stop what he's doing, and Simon says that he refuses to stop. As this is just the start, his magic circle is now complete. He puts his palm on top of it, starting to absorb the life energy of the rats around him. Seaman says, if only he had been stronger from the start, he never would have lost Katarina. Each one of the rats in their respective circles starts sacrificing themselves as the aura pools in the middle. An explosion soon follows as Seaman is now free from his prison cell, and we see he actually has a giant golem behind him now, which is what he based his thesis on that the Elder stole from him. Seaman looks over at the guards, saying that was the same face that Katarina made. As we see them stricken with absolute fear, looking up at the golem, Seaman says that he tried thinking of reasons for him to still be alive, but now he understands what it is. As his golem swipes away at the guards, killing them, then explodes out of the wall, Seaman says that it's all because he needs to take revenge on the world where the two of them couldn't live a happy life together. As now, he is even more golems wreaking havoc in the Mage Tower. As he's walking through the destruction, he tells Katarina there's no need to worry as he won't be weak anymore. He'll obtain any power that he can get his hands on, regardless of what it costs. He will make sure that he changes everything. Bro has some serious crazy eyes. We then see the Elder's lightning magic as he is currently in combat. The shadow begins to loom over him, as none other than Seaman, riding the OG golem he made in prison, approaches. The Elder asks if he's out of his mind, asking why he would dare use black magic since he's one who serves God. Why would he side with the demons? Seaman gives him a cold, icy stare, asking what any of that matters anymore. The Duke then also starts to run away, begging for him to spare him, as he's someone who can make him the master of this place. If he spares his life, he'll do anything he wants. Seaman stretches his hand out, saying that he does not have the power he thinks he does, as he smites him down. He says that you can't bring back someone who's dead. He tells Katarina that this world that screwed them over will suffer his wrath, all for the sake of her. Then it jumps sometime later to a man being knighted by the king, and we learn he is the hero named Lakan. The king begs that he save the world from the darkness, as it has now been some time since Seaman's rampage has begun, and he has been given the title of Demon King. He is trampling over all of their territories, slaughtering innocent lives, and he has already destroyed 2 kingdoms and 1 dukedom. The fate of the world all lies solely in the hands of Lakan, the hero, so he pleads with him once more to eradicate the Demon King and save the world. As we see their banners high in the sky, Lakan looks at his sword and raises it, starting to give them a speech. Brave warriors of the divine Artinia Empire. The brilliant light of their empire has lost its power, and the giant shadow the Demon King has cast is swelling up the Lad Asia continent. However, they will not sit down. For the sake of their families and for the sake of the world, today they will get rid of the Demon King and become the last hope that protects this world. We get a flashback of Katarina asking Seaman if he heard the news, asking how it makes sense to cut off a child's hand just for stealing bread. Moon tries to tell her that she's speaking too loud and someone might overhear her. She says that the nobles can only give such harsh punishments so easily because they never have to worry about going hungry, asking why such a child needs to be punished so unreasonably just because of the social class he was born into. She has a sad look on her face, saying that even they weren't born in this position because they wanted to be either. Seaman looks at her full of hope and says, perhaps a day will come when social status no longer matters, and we can all live equal and free. She says his name, saying that a day like that won't come just by waiting for it. He asks what she wants him to do, and she says they have to be the change they want to see in the world. Otherwise, the children they'll raise later will go through the same things. His books fall to the ground as he starts to get embarrassed, asking what she means about the children they'll raise, saying they haven't even gotten married yet. She says that wasn't the important part of the message, but says they're going to get married anyway. Seaman starts to get really panicked and says that they will, but he's not ready yet. She asks if he's going to or not, and he says of course he will. She sighs and calls him terrible. She's back to being playful, saying that he's so shy and she's probably the only person who would even marry him. The flashback ends, showing us his Demon King castle as he's standing before it. He calls out to Katarina, saying soon all of this will be over. It took a long time, but the world they wanted so badly will soon be a reality. As we see Lakan's army in front of him, the soldiers all start to slowly advance their march, and we see them with expressions of dread. Lakan then calls out to Seaman, saying that the entire world has been filled with suffering, and he swears in the name of God and justice that all of his evil deeds shall be judged today. Seaman chuckles at first, and then breaks into full-blown laughter that can be heard across the entire field. He asks if Lacan really plans to judge him with God and justice, asking if he really thinks he would fear some false god and their hypocritical sense of justice. Lacan tells him that he will make sure of it, as countless heroes of the Empire stand with him to bring judgment down upon him, and today they shall take down the demon and protect their world. As he leads in his troops, he yells, "Charge!" as they all start to fall in right behind him, as they start to get close to him. Simon asks who they are to judge him, saying that he is the one who shall be the judge. The day he lost Katerina, justice died. He slams his staff into the ground, creating a magic circle beneath it, as if time has frozen for the soldiers charging at him. Simon says that he no longer believes in such illusions, and that he'll show them the one thing he does believe in. All of the soldiers lose control of their bodies as we see their life force getting completely devoured by the power within Simon's ritual, the same way he summoned the golems before, pretty much deleting the soldiers. The golems then rise up from the energy of their corpses and let out a roar that causes Lacan to put up his guard. Simon then smirks at him, telling him to look, saying this is the day true justice is born. He tells Lacan to cast away his deceptive faith, as today marks the beginning of a new era, one ruled by him, where he shall lay waste to all of the nobility in this world. He has amassed an army of golems. One of them raises its fist into the air, grabbing a fistful of soldiers and squeezing them into a human lemonade. The other soldiers, watching their comrades get squished, start to panic but realize there's no future if they back down here. Simon's eyes look a little bit sad, and he calls them fools, saying they're nothing but garbage. They have nothing more than their social status to cling to if they're trying to resist real power. But he does not Lacan to spare them. He will make sure they are all eradicated from this moment on. We see Lacan readying himself to dash in, calling out to Simon, saying that he's unforgivable. A yellow aura imbues his blade as he leaps through the air, slicing through one of the golems and instantly destroying it. Simon is surprised that he took it out with a single strike and says this must be the reason he couldn't take down the Leah kingdom, no matter how many golems he sent. It must have all been because of Lacan. Simon looks at him with disgusted eyes. But Lacan's look is like he's only doing what needs to be done. Simon declares that he will make sure that Lacan dies today, and an all-out war ensues between Simon and Lacan, with both their soldiers respectively being golems and humans. The battlefield then gets eerily quiet as we see all the broken weapons on the ground and all the blood. Now it's only Simon and one of his golems left, and Lacan is so gassed out he's propped himself up against his sword. He looks back up at Simon, saying he's going to put an end to this, as even the golem is starting to fall apart right behind Simon. It begins to crumble. Simon calls out to Lacan as Lacan raises his blade. Simon tells him that he does not know how rotten the world is, and if it wasn't for him, as we see him crying and glaring up at him with eyes full of regret, he says he would have started everything anew after he cleansed the world. He curses him and declares that his entire bloodline shall spend their entire lives in suffering as his tears slowly turn into tears of blood. Lacan tightens the grip on his blade and gives it one final swing with all of the aura he has left, cutting off Simon's head and even destroying the bits and pieces left over from the golem behind him. As Simon's head floats through the air, he starts to recall Katerina, saying that when he smiles like this and is with her, all of her worries just wash away. This is when she's at her absolute happiest, as she's holding onto his face. We see her step on her tippy toes, giving him a kiss and telling him that she loves him. These were the moments he was thinking of in death. Then he jolts awake, immediately reaching for his throat, asking if it was all a dream since his head is still on his neck. He uses his forearm to wipe some sweat off his head, saying that he's got a crazy headache, but there is no wound on his hand, and he wonders what's going on. He's also woken up in an unfamiliar room and wonders if maybe he's in a foreign country, asking how he even lived, saying even black magic can't bring someone to life, because if that were possible, he would have done it already. So, how is it that he is still here? He is then shocked by something, as we see a familiar knight on the wall. It's none other than a portrait of Lacan, and he asks why it's here. A butler then enters the room, calling out to the young lord and saying he's so glad that he's finally awake. He hugs him, saying that he's so relieved since he didn't wake up for 2 weeks. He thought they had lost the last of Lacan's bloodline. Simon asks what he means by young lord, asking who the butler is. The butler starts to panic, asking if Simon really doesn't recognize him. He falls to his knees, saying the accident must have damaged his memories, and it's his fault for not taking care of him. He starts to cry, saying he'll tell Simon some basic stuff to jog his memory since it might just be temporary, and he'll probably remember things once. He starts telling him, saying that soon, Simon will become the lord of this place, and he's the successor of the Loken 6th county of the Baroque Empire, as well as the descendant of the great hero Loken. His name is Luke D. Loken. Simon is a bit taken aback, saying that means he died 500 years ago, and now he is his enemy's descendant. Almost half a century after his death, he sweats nervously and then immediately starts running, much to the surprise of the butler. The butler tells him that he shouldn't be moving around so much in that state. But of course, Simon ignores him, asking if he's really expected to believe this. And if he looks like a fool, he grabs onto the door handle, saying it doesn't make any sense, and then slams it open to look out of the balcony. Simon yells, saying that there's no way this is real, but much to his surprise, what he sees is a giant towering golem decked out in armor. Simon loses his balance a little bit, asking if this is real. Since he's seen it now, it confirms that everything he said was true. Looking at how intricate it is, he can tell that the weapon is far more advanced than golem magic. Magic that he could have only imagined is now standing before him. The butler calls out to him, and Simon asks what his name is. He says his name is Hans, and he is his personal servant. Simon then asks Hans what exactly he's looking at, and Hans says the thing is called a gigant. It is a bipedal humanoid weapon. Simon asks if it's made using golem magic, and Hans says that he's half right because a gigant is made through scientific hex tech, paired with magic. Due to the advances in technology, unlike golems which are controlled from afar, gigants are driven by a pilot who remains inside of them. Simon finds it hard to believe that a person goes into it, and Hans says that is truly the case. Simon starts to think about it, saying that it requires a lot of advanced technology for someone to pilot it. But if Hans is telling him the truth, it is truly an amazing weapon, which means you're safe from external threats in battle, and can even react quicker to events compared to golems that you control from afar. It addresses all the problems he had with his golems in the past. Hans is just surprised that Simon seems so interested. Then, Simon starts to walk back to his room. Hans calls out to him, and Simon stops moving, saying, "If it really exists, that means 500 years have truly passed." He wonders why he had to be born as a descendant of his enemy. We hear them running around the house as Hans continuously yells his name while Simon is chugging alcohol. He tells him that he can't push himself as we see him standing on top of his desk, chugging it. Simon wipes his mouth, looking down at Hans, and says that he's a descendant of Lacan. Hans says yes, asking why it matters, and Simon then asks, "What's the big deal? He should be healthier than most people." He then starts to feel a sharp pain and drops to his knees, making Hans worried. Simon starts to gasp for air. Hans said he tried to warn him, and he needs to be careful because of the curse. Simon asks what curse he's talking about, and Hans says he somewhat expected it, but he really doesn't remember anything. Simon tells him to go ahead and spit it out. He starts to rant, and Simon tells him just to get to the point. Hans says that Lord Lacan was praised for his efforts in saving the world, but he soon passed away due to the demon lord's curse. Simon wonders what he is talking about, asking if he really did that. He recalls him saying that his entire bloodline shall spend their lives in suffering, and he wonders if that's what he means. But it was only something he said because he got pissed, and now he finds it embarrassing. He can't believe they thought it to be true. The story jumps back to a recounting of events 500 years ago. The peaceful world faced a danger capable of wiping it out, aka Simon, the demon lord. His dark magic could spawn golems that were more powerful than an army, and he wiped out countless soldiers with the flick of his hand. Just like that, it seemed like the demon lord would take over the world. But thanks to the righteous warrior Lon, the world found its peace again. However, the demon lord cast a curse on him right before he died, which caused the warrior and his entire bloodline to die a painful death at a young age. Simon closes the book and sighs, saying they just really spun it however they wanted. He didn't even cast a curse in the first place, asking if they really believe a curse can last that long. He then thinks about it, but says it is his fault for losing, and wonders why he had to be born as a member of Lon's family in the first place, saying it feels like he was the one who got cursed here. He then starts to grab another book, and then even another one, saying that since this is a second chance for him, he can't face Katerina like this. This rotten world existed for another 500 years, so he can't imagine how much more corrupted it is now, because no matter how much time has passed, he's sure not all of his followers were wiped out, and he needs to learn more about this era for now. If he can reunite with his followers, he'll really change the world this time around. The next day, we see the Jigon still outside the house. It starts to take us to see Moon's room upstairs as he puts another book down. He's once again chugging alcohol, saying there's no way he's going to be able to find his followers. Putting his lack of followers aside, the people have almost forgotten about him entirely. He says it's too much, even if it's been 500 years, as there's not even a trace of his existence. On top of that, his body has no mana nor stamina, asking what he can even do with it. As he begins to walk, he twists his ankle and falls face first into the ground, asking what he's even meant to do. He clenches his fist out of regret and calls out to Katarina, asking if he's doomed to achieve nothing in this life, as he only wanted to create a world where everybody was equal in content. He then hears a man yelling for the young master, which surprises him. He sees the door open and wonders what's going on, as it's so noisy. He heads outside onto the balcony and hears a man asking how long he's going to avoid them. The man tells Hans and everybody else that they haven't been introduced to, that he and the other merchants will not take a step back until they have an audience with the young master. He is from the Alone Merchant Association, specifically the branch master named Darren. Seaman wonders if he's in debt and laughs, saying that Lon's descendants sure have it rough. Darren tells him that it's 30,000 pesos, and he borrowed that from them last year to develop a mine, but he's always avoided them. He asks if he even anticipated paying it back, then saying he can't live like this anymore. Hans tries to tell him that the young master must stay at rest because of his condition and they'll figure out how to pay him another way. But Darren says no, as they must hear from the young master himself on the matter. Hans and everybody else start to look anxious, and Darren says, based on their reactions, it seems like he won't be able to pay it back right now, and while 30,000 is not a small amount, he'll give them an offer, asking why they don't just hand over the Gigan in their house, saying it's probably not even worth 30,000 since it is second-hand, so he's giving them a great offer, one of the men yells, saying that it's impossible as they only have 3 in their entire house, asking how they're meant to defend their territory like this. We are introduced to the knight commander named Rogers. Rogers says that he won't allow it and they must kill him if they want to take it, because the giants are crucial to their defense. Hans tells him to relax. And then we are introduced to the accountant named Dixon, who says that instead of taking the offer, they should just raise taxes temporarily. Hans sighs, asking if he doesn't know how their people are doing right now, as they can't have the little amount they have left leave. Dixon says the only way forward is to hand over the gigant. Then Rogers continues yelling, saying he told him that would be impossible. Seaman starts to laugh, saying, this is such a good household. Lacan would be rolling in his grave. Darren tells everybody to relax, saying he wants to seize that Gigan in the manor, but he doesn't want people to think of him as the person who took from the great hero's house. He starts to point towards the gigant, asking if he can just leave with it. Rogers asks if he's joking, saying he already told him, but Darren says that he's probably misunderstanding him, as he's not talking about the gigant, but rather the magic tower directly behind it. They're all surprised by this, and Rogers says the magic tower is a better choice than the gigant. Even Hans says nobody goes there anymore. Dixon says they had some income from it as a tourist attraction before, but now it's useless. Seaman asks what he means as he starts to look over at it. He completely recognizes it as his magic tower. 5 centuries ago, the Demon King erected a magical tower in this land. This place was much farther away from where the mage was situated. He lived here with Katarina. This place was broken down and tattered, but for the two of them, it seemed like a place of comfort, the perfect resting spot for the banquet of their dreams. Unfortunately, now that same tower is about to be lost, infuriating him greatly. Darren emphasizes that his company will refine the tower and make it a brilliant tourist attraction. This way, the economy will also take an uprise, allowing the greater benefit of the territory. Dixon is prepared to sign up when all of a sudden, a giant rumbling startles them. The young lord is pissed and making his way outside. He demands them to move out of the way and confronts the sleazy merchant. Dixon tries to act like he cares about his health and explains how they were in the middle of negotiations and about to get the signature going. Enraged, Seaman calls him a blabbermouth who's only good at talking crap without weighing the significance of the demon tower. He's infuriated at the mere suggestion of Dixon taking control of it. His unusual temperament scares the merchant shitless because he wasn't expecting him to react this way. The merchant attempts to speak ambiguously, but our boy isn't having any of it. Taking the magic tower would be similar to marking control over the center of their territory. He has already uncovered Darren's plan to extend his influence and authority. Darren is rather shocked that he thought so far ahead and argues that his assumptions are baseless. Seaman can't stomach the fact that he's trying to take over their territory, comparing him to be even worse than incompetent people as merchants are only looking out for themselves. Darren's situation has flipped over its head. He knows he has to respond with something credible and reasonable, but instead, he opens his mouth and reminds Seaman about their unpaid debt. After all, it makes sense for the company to get what it is rightfully owed. Interestingly, Seaman declares that they do intend to pay the company's debt. He's ready to hand over every last penny in 10 days. He unleashes his anger and demands the merchant to leave now. Darren is too scared to speak and runs away, hoping that the young master will be firm with his words. With him gone, Seaman thinks that merchants are all the same. Rogers is impressed by their young master's control of the situation. The vassals are collectively touched to the point of tears by their master's incredible foresight. They are also awed by his loyalty to their ancestors' accomplishments. Seaman doesn't get what they're on about, because he did it for himself. Rogers is beaming with joy for maintaining honor of the Lacan house. After all, the merchant was proven helpless against their master's response. They could almost envision Lacan's spirit inside him. Little do they know, it just pisses Seaman even more. It's tempting him to become the Demon King again. Anyway, Butler Hands is intrigued how he's going to return the money, especially with the hefty amount in mind. Hands compares the money to 10,000 wheat sacks or a single gigant unit. The thing is, they can't even sec help from other merchants right now, which means they'll have to come up with a different plan. Seaman expresses that if that's everything his vassals could offer to him, then they're practically useless. He rejects their help and intends to resolve the debt on his own. He's got no assets and definitely no facilities to provide. Food is scarce too. There's practically nothing that seems to work for him. Frustrated, Dude is starting to question if this is the same household responsible for slaying the Demon King. He's really pissed that there's absolutely nothing for him to use in the time of need. He even accuses the vassals for stealing the amount. Hans is a little shocked he even laid down that accusation. He points to the history of things for reference. Right after slaying the Demon King, Lacan's house was bestowed with a title of Marquis, and he shared a huge cut of the territory in the kingdom. It still doesn't make sense to Seaman. The butler continues, explaining how the Duke Baroque decided to venture a rebellion against the kingdom of Livia. Viscount Lacan was responsible for facing this injustice, but in the end, he's the one who fell victim to the curse of the Demon King, leaving things halfway as he suffered a crushing defeat. With that, the title of Marquis was quickly revoked, and this man was exiled to the borders of the kingdom. Terry Lacan silently passed away with his waning health. All of a sudden, it seems like Lacan never intended to have his territory built near the tower. Seaman is worried about the critical financial condition of their household. It doesn't make sense how it ran for 5 centuries. He wants to know what happened. Hans comes to address that part as well. Turns out that his ancestors intended on regaining glory and restoring the Lacan family to its heights. In order for that comeback to happen, those idiots expunged their resources for their cause. This meant using up all of the assets and authority they had just to recover the reputation of the Lacan household. However, the cures stayed prominent among the family, passing all the way down. No amount of hard work could ever remedy their struggles, as it was all in vain. That is what became of a glorious house, of the hero who saved the world from doom. Hans is regretful to remind the young master that he lost consciousness due to a gigant incident recently. It also happened because of Luke attempting to tirelessly restore the household's reputation like the rest of the descendants, to show the world that he also possessed the qualities of the hero, but it led to overexerting himself. Hearing this, Seaman gets up from his seat and assesses the current situation. There's basically nothing they could do to save their skin. Hans is once again regretful to mention his helplessness, apologizing to his master. Surprisingly, Hans decides to maintain his hope and is willing to ruin his life all for the sake of gathering the amount. However, Seaman is uninterested in anything sacrificial like that. Instead, he's got a plan of his own. With a sinister look on his face, Seaman realizes that all they have to do is repay the money in any way possible. Well, in the next scene, we get an idea of what he meant. The vassals are shocked as Seaman has pulled out the glorious movie of removing the statue of the hero Lacan. Every single servant is dreading the fact that he sold the statue for the amount. Hans is stunned to find that the statue is missing and wonders where it could have gone. More importantly, he wants to have a chat with his master first. Suddenly, one of the guards comes to inform them about a new problem. Turns out that Seaman left the estate right when the guards were at their weakest. Hans collapses, realizing what's going on. He just can't place a finger on his master's plans. We get a shot of a carriage carrying the large statue and Seaman boarded along, being a drunk idiot. The coachman has been dying to ask a question. Seaman doesn't remember him, so Philip nervously introduces himself as his guard knight. He wants to know if Seaman is truly bent on selling the statue. That's what he's planning at least. Philip tries to remind him of the statue's rich history of surviving 5 centuries of legacy. But this dude just doesn't care. Because the important thing is the present. Philip warns him that he won't be able to pay the debt based on one statue. However, Seaman already knows that and claims he's got a larger plan in place. The guard knight is satisfied to hear that and thinks that it will all be understandable as long as he succeeds. Seaman finally reveals his grandiose plan, which is that he's going to use the money from the statue to gamble his way to acquiring 30,000 pesos. Yes, what a plan. Philip is really starting to worry now, and he's forced to stop the carriage. He warns the young master against crafting such a dangerous plan. Seaman doesn't get why he's traveling along with him if he's out here lecturing him on every little thing. Philip reminds the idiot master that he got dragged along without choice. He wouldn't have ever taken him here if he knew the plan about gambling. Poor guy even recommends turning back and coming up with a new plan. Seaman thinks he's one hell of an idiot, reminding the man that if they were to turn back now, he would have to face the allegations of attempting to sell the statue for gambling money. They would just never forgive him and could seriously expel him from the household. Philip is stunned to hear his words. Seaman thinks they won't be able to do much regardless since he's the young lord, which means the only person to get kicked out would be Philip himself. Poor guy feels a shiver run down his spine. The young master advises him to choose wisely for himself and wonders if he's interested in becoming a vagrant who doesn't have cash to spare, or on second thought, he could become the hero who helped restore the family's honor. Philip realizes he doesn't have much of a choice and thinks it's better to keep moving. The young master is delighted to hear that. The guard knight certainly wasn't expecting this much of a shift in the young master's demeanor, comparing him to the devil. The scene shifts to the shore side. 5 minutes are left until their departure. The guard knight is uncertain until Seaman reminds him of what's going to happen when they go back. They step foot inside the ship as it begins journeying the beautiful sea. Nearby is the harbor city Lamer, which looks impressively stunning at night. The ship has made its way here. Philip attempts to negotiate with a bunch of hard knocks who aren't willing to pay much for the statue. Seaman calls for his attention and requests that he lead the way. He's fine with what the money they got for the statue. Seaman is surprised to see the city change so much, prompting a question from Philip, who asks if he's been here before. Seaman ambiguously confirms, and adds that the place was quite different back then. After all, they could never come here due to a large kraken blocking their way. It was nothing more than a deserted island of sorts. The passage of 500 years is really setting in for the Black Mage. Still, he's glad to have come here, as it was Philip's idea. He emphasizes that the city has gone through many changes, becoming the second biggest in the southern region and always revolutionizing. Before it was just an unreachable island due to sea monsters stopping the development and exploration. However, soon after magic and technology advanced ahead, the place jumped in its population. There's also the fact that there's lots of gambling going around here, which he recommends for his master. Seaman emphasizes that he's extremely confident, which is why he's here in the first place. The duo stands before a golden palace, ready to head inside. The guard knight stops him for a moment. Poor guy is so anxious he needs some time to settle. Philip can't believe that he's so calm, and wonders if he's got a secret method to win. Seaman confirms with a confident face that the singular determiner of victory in gambling is one's attitude. After heading inside, reality falls apart. Seaman is just losing like a dog. He's starting to understand just how corrupt gambling really is. Things are getting troublesome for him. His opponent claims that he's stealing all of the luck. Seaman argues that one's ability is also part of the game, but this just makes the man break into laughter. He's glad to play the game against a young lord like him. At the same time, it turns out Seaman has completely emptied his slot. However, he's still not prepared to end the game. He demands Philip to exchange the remainder of the amount into coins. The guard knight is horrified because if they lose this, they're done for good. Seaman roars at his servant, which is a good thing to his opponent who senses his frustration. Seaman decides to go all in on the amount. Philip has just accepted the fate of the family at this point. It seems insane to even his competitor, who is slightly nervous to face him now. Seaman explains that he isn't anxious about the outcome since it won't change anything. Impressed, they decide to reveal each other's cards. The guy ends up rolling eighths of 3 suits, so he's more than confident in his victory now. However, Seaman stops him right before he takes the money. After all, he has yet to reveal his side. Shockingly, this guy pulled royal spades paired with an ace. The man is shocked, while Seaman is happy to have caused such a game-changing reversal. He extends his hand as a sign of victory. Philip is out here acting like he supported our boy from day one, when in reality he was pissing his pants. Slamming his fist on the table, the gambler accuses him of cheating. Seaman wonders if he's referring to the assistants behind him, which were responsible for exposing Seaman's cards and giving his opponent an advantage. The man is shocked that he came to realize that he was cheating. Seaman reflects that he knew immediately. The people around them were all manipulating the game, and they were even passing him cards. The reason he continuously fell for their tricks is because he was attempting to come in contact with every single card. He left a tiny trace of mana on each card, allowing him to control the draw when he really wanted. After all, for someone who commanded the advanced Golem army, something like this is nothing. He's confident to win every single match without using sneaky tricks. Seaman wants the man to simply acknowledge his loss and get done with it. However, the gambler refuses to play around in fairness and reveals his true nature. Behind Seaman, that man's subordinates whip out weapons to beat him up. Seaman bickers his annoyance with the fact that these clowns remain the same even after 500 years. While he does not possess the same amount of mana he used to, it's still more than enough to take care of these scumbags. Preparing a spell in his hand, Seaman prepares to take them all down, inviting them to attack him. The guard knight commands his master to duck as he whips out his blade and slashes many bodies. He insults the man for ever wielding a sword against the last heir of the Locken family. The guard knight believes that it's just fitting for them to receive punishment in death if they're prepared for such a cause. Hearing this, the gambler shrinks in shock, realizing that he's committed an unforgivable sin. Philip raises his blade against the whining man who still tried attacking his noble. All of a sudden, the situation seems to be in favor of Seaman, who didn't really have to involve himself in the fight to de-escalate the situation. Fast forward to them coming out of the casino. They've racked up more than 10,000 pesos in one go. At this point, Seaman is assessing the capabilities of his vassal, who he underestimated to be just a simple porter. Turns out he's got impressive sword talent too. Still, the earnings they got today were good enough. However, the same strategy may not work for long, as it may raise suspicion from the gambling houses. Planning for countermeasures, Seaman asks if there's any place else where money can be made aside from gambling houses. Philip thinks about it for a moment and recommends visiting the Gigant Arena, a place the Black Mage has never heard of. The guard knight confirms that there are battle arenas designed specifically for gigants to fight each other in the form of entertainment. The outcome of the match determines the prize money, but if you're good with your performance, it could help them earn way more than just 30,000 pesos. Seaman contemplates the idea for a second. He's already established an interest in gigants, and since they're channeling some of the golem magic, it may be possible to manipulate the outcome. The guard knight encourages his master to believe in his words since he was once a top student of the Gigant Military Academy. Seaman is good with the idea, so he wants him to lead the way. As they're making their way, one of the guards is beating down a commoner for causing some kind of trouble. Philip is disgusted by their behavior for beating up a young child. This sight is a lesson for Seaman, who realizes that even after 500 whole years, some things about the world still remain unchanged. It was just the truth that certain things became worse versions of what they used to be with the passage of time. Frustrated at the sight, Seaman speaks his thoughts. But before he's able to finish, someone else cuts him off and tells the guards to stop. There's a woman who reminds the royal guards of their duty to protect the subjects instead of mercilessly beating them. Seeing this woman's sight, Seaman is utterly stumped. Her face, her voice, and her beliefs, they match with Katarina. The woman speaks her heart for the safety of the children. In this life, this woman seems to be a princess. The royal guards express that it's an order given by the count himself, so there's no use. People are becoming anxious because all of the refugees are leaving the city. The princess counters, questioning if these men believe in the idea of treating others like cattle, in an environment where the basic human needs aren't even met. Seaman's eyes widen as he hears her words. The woman adds that many children have already lost their families, and if they are deemed guilty, then she's the one to take personal responsibility first and get punished ahead of them. Before being a princess of the Volga Kingdom, she considers herself one of the refugees seeking exile. Against her words, the guards prove useless, yet annoyed that her way of doing things will complicate matters. They express their personal frustration as they're being ordered from above, instead of their own hearts. Philip chimes in to ask the young master if they should stay for a while. Seaman is stunned and questions the identity of the woman. The guard knight explains that his woman is famous in the Volga Kingdom for always speaking her mind and against the cruelty of nobles. Her own kingdom fell to ruin for strange reasons, and not even Philip would have ever thought to encounter Princess Reina in this city. The word Reina gets stuck down his throat. Seaman is expressionless yet full of emotion at the same time. In every conceivable reality, the woman in front of her looks identical to Katarina. He wonders if she was also reincarnated, but that doesn't explain how she looks the exact same while he doesn't. The royal guards intervene and force their way into stopping Princess Reina. They don't have any choice either, because they'll get punished for disobeying orders. Reina frees herself only to get smacked out of impulse. This very sight wakes up the devil inside of this man, as Seaman lunges forth to bash the shit out of the guard. Beating down the man senseless with one punch after another, Seaman claims that he doesn't care if the history of the world changed or not, because scumbags like these people will always exist. For some persistently annoying reason, they never disappear no matter the era. At last, Princess Reina jumps in to stop his rampage, helping the man reclaim his senses. Reina expresses that he doesn't have to go through the trouble of doing so much. Seaman is still fixated on Katarina when all of a sudden, the other royal guard waves his sword at him for raising his hand against a guard and breaking the imperial law. Philip mockingly asks if the imperial law matters more than a human's life, and he's already put his sword against the man's neck, so it's checkmate. With that, the matter is settled as the guards walk away defeated. Unfortunately, now they won't be able to visit the Gigant Arena because of the trouble that was stirred just now. Seaman goes crazy for Katarina, shouting her name and anxiously asking if she's hurt. He apologizes for his temper and explodes on her. But unfortunately, this woman does not know or remember him at all. Reina straight up asks about his identity. At this point, she's starting to find him a creepy man and recommends that he stay away. Seaman helplessly believes that if only he tells her what happened, she would remember his real identity. However, Reina denies any such considerations. She despises the nobles and thinks that there's no difference between him or the guards who beat up children. She also thinks he's making a critical error in his judgment for mistaking her for someone else. The woman reminds him that she's not Katarina, but rather Princess Reina. That puts a dead stop to the conversation while Philip comes rushing for the young master. He wants to clarify to the princess that they're not causing any trouble. Words become blurry. Seaman's mind drifts into the background, remembering the countless agonizing hours he spent in grief all alone, realizing that his lover would simply never return. And now, his resolve crumbled, merely because Reina and Katarina shared appearances with each other. A servant of the princess comes looking for her, reminding her that she had an important event to attend. Poor guy had to go through the trouble of finding her in a rush. Victor is annoyed to discover that she was arguing with the guards again. More importantly, he's concerned about the men standing next to her. Reina fills in the gaps and explains that it's their first encounter. Victor reminds them not to get close with the princess. Seaman expresses the sheer stupidity of things. He believed he was the one responsible for escalating the situation, but in the end, the reality is, he helped her regardless of his later reaction. Seaman clarifies that he didn't look for anything in return, but this woman doesn't even have the heart to thank him for his effort. He has the princess speechless and unable to respond. Seaman turns around, ready to leave them alone. The princess and her butler are also about to go, but a thought bothers her. She confesses that the noble is indeed correct. She didn't even thank him just now. Let's cut to the Gigant Arena. The commentators are riling up the crowd with the intense matchup going on. Right when everyone is cheering in joy, Seaman and Philip decide to take a seat. The fight is finished with one gigant mauling the other with a powerful swing of its axe. With the final attack dealt, Adolf is declared the victor of the match. Apparently, Seaman has been placing bets on gigants and consistently winning out without any troubles. Even he believes that it's too easy because the gigants are based on fundamental golem magic. This easily helps him determine the victor of the match thanks to the flow of mana coursing through the creatures. The commentators talk about how the upcoming match seems like a bloodbath to come. Philip is confident that they'll be able to predict the next match. He's confident in Savage's victory against Sting, since they boast winning and losing streaks respectively. Savage has the clear advantage, but Seaman thinks the match will be cut short and finish quickly, introducing the monstrous gigant with a consistent winning streak. The dual axe-wielding Savage. His opponent is someone that shockingly stole a victory from someone in their previous encounter. This revelation surprises Seaman because the rest of the crowd calls him a lucky gigant, and nothing more. Sting is introduced as a tattered gigant, much smaller in size. The second Seaman sees this gigant, he decides to place all of his bets on Sting, which seems like the worst decision ever in this situation. Philip thinks his master has lost his damn mind after all. Savage is a monster compared to the lucky gigant. However, Seaman is sure to have seen something and believes in the future where Sting will prevail. The match is quick to begin with Savage's first outlash, but for some reason everyone is shocked that Sting is managing to keep up blow for blow. The little guy is shattering expectations of everyone who downplayed him. He's countering each attack. Savage is impressed with his abilities, but at that moment he decides to stop messing around and unleashes his fury. Philip is crying his eyeballs out because they've bet all their money on Sting. Seaman, on the other hand, believes that contrary to everyone's expectations, Sting is channeling way better control of mana. It just doesn't make sense to him how the gigant refuses to unleash its mana's capabilities. Sting has just lost an arm and is inches away from defeat, while Savage looks him down for accepting defeat. Raising his dual axes, this behemoth prepares to destroy its opponent in a final swing. Once more, poor Philip is out here having a panic attack while his master is as cool as a cucumber. The axes descend upon Sting, but in that critical moment, something happens as sparks of electricity begin surfacing around the gigant. Savage's attack connects with the ground, but his opponent is nowhere to be found, prompting him to get confused. The so-called lucky gigant finally speaks, claiming that bets can always be adjusted in gigant matches up until 30 seconds. With that time frame finished, now he can go full strength without worrying about any repairs. This means Sting was intentionally holding back to make sure he received the most amount of money when he won. The gigant releases an incantation circle, which descends a column of fire upon his opponent. Savage is getting grilled to the bone, causing a shocking upset among the crowd and in the arena. They can't believe that their prize champion is getting knocked around despite his high win percentage. In the end, the victor of the fight is Sting, the underdog who became the new champion, while Savage is turned to Crisp. Philip cries tears of joy because he never expected them to win. Meanwhile, Seaman is stunned to find out that giants are actually capable of activating magic spells. Such a thing shouldn't even be possible in his worldview. Philip explains the confusion. It turns out that Karen, the person piloting Sting, is a rune knight. It's not exactly uncommon to see giants capable of using magic. However, they intentionally hide their strength to raise the odds of winning. But that's not the thing bothering our boy. He's perplexed because the fundamental theory of magic was constructed by him, and it's so unique in its essence that no amount of time could have modified it. The reason is simple. It's because of the fact that it was completed with the help of black magic. The scene cuts to the giant hangar. The guard knight doesn't get why they're here and emphasizes they should return as soon as possible. However, too many things are bothering Seaman at the moment, and he's getting tensed up. They coincidentally bump into Victor, who is arguing against Reina from participating in the match. The fight's odds are against her, but Reina believes in her mercenary Andre, who could easily pilot Mir to defeat the Count's giant. Seaman notices that they're stuck in problems of their own. Victor questions what led to her decision to accept a reckless duel. The harsh condition is that she'll have to marry the Count in the case she loses. However, this girl is defiant in her cause and claims that she did it for the refugees, who would have starved to death otherwise. Her goal is to save everyone she loves, and this outcome, even though it places her in trouble, is the only way. Her butler can't accept her becoming a sacrificial pawn for the benefit of others, especially considering the fact that they have a broken giant, so there's just no chance of victory. Victor understands her cause to help the refugees, but is against the decision to put her own life on the line. Ignoring their senseless chatter, Seaman prefers to take his leave as he's heard enough. He wants to return home at once. As he's walking, the mage assures himself that the woman is definitely not Katarina, so he has no reason to involve himself. That is until he hears how the princess is risking selling her freedom, especially when the Count is a ruthless man who has already threatened the refugees many times. Orange Hair over here reminds her that if they don't replace the Mana Stone, the giant is far from being operable to begin with. And if it was operable, the difference in their models is too vast. The Count's giant will decimate Reina's in an actual fight. So in this case, he advises that she heed to her butler's advice. Stubborn as a rock, Reina persists in her ambition, claiming that she can't swallow defeat without even trying. The helpless situation moves her to tears as she questions who will be the one responsible for helping the weak, if not her. At last, a voice of hope speaks, inquiring if he should figure things out. Reina turns to find the noble, who is of the opinion that both the giant and its Mana Stone can be utilized. Victor comes out with a sword in hand to protect the princess from the creeps. He thinks the situation is far too coincidental, and suspects them to be assassins of the Count. His words are really pissing off Seaman here, while the guard knight tries to explain about who they're really dealing with, which is the 15th descendant of the Lacan family. Victor is perplexed to hear that these men belong to the hero's family, and he's still suspicious of them. But now Reina wants her butler to put her blade down. She apologizes for what happened earlier and realizes that they've heard the conversation before. She doesn't want to admit that she doesn't have any other options, but it's just the reality. Reina wants an additional favor from this man. Seaman is happy to hear her out, and this time, he's going to make sure to showcase his skills instead of talking about who he is. The mage works with the giant, while the repairman explains how futile their efforts are going to be, since the machine is basically inoperable. They're afraid that this guy might end up damaging the giant instead, and chalk it off to a noble's high ego. So the guard knight uses this opportunity to make a bet with these fellows. He wants to wager 10,000 pesos on his young master fixing the giant, something not even the iron mages like them were able to fix. Of course, it's an incredibly ridiculous offer, but Philip has the advantage here, and simply calls them cowards for not standing by their words. All of a sudden, Reina asks Philip an important question. She can't help but see why a tiny little dagger like the one in Seaman's hand is capable of fixing giants. Seeing this, even Philip's confidence cracks because he doesn't get what his master is going to do with a tool like that. Seaman attempts to slice the giant's head, receiving surprise from Philip, who realizes this is no good at all. Turns out he sliced off his hand to draw blood and is confident in what's about to happen. Extending his hand, Seaman casts a myriad of red magical circles with all of his might. With the manipulation of magic completed, the mage calls out to the gigant and demands it to arise. I think that's a solo leveling reference right there. The magic tower of the Demon King Seaman. At one point, he stood on top of the world with his golem army. Seaman did not allow for them to rest for even a moment, deeming them immortal beings who exist to destroy their enemies. That's when he commanded them to rise up from their defeated states, empowering the golems with black magic and resurrecting them again. The same goes for the glowing gigant that is now brimming with a pool of mana. Philip celebrates like his biggest fan, while the rest of the Iron Mages are in utter disbelief. Even Reina can't believe how this man was able to awaken a gigant in that state. The fact that a person was able to revive a dead magic crystal is unbelievable. No one had heard of this level of magic in their lives. If only the entire world witnessed the glory of Seaman's magic, they would be celebrating human advancement and revolution. Philip is now convinced that his master is capable of doing anything he pleases. On the other hand, the Iron Mages refuse to acknowledge what he just did, calling it the works of black magic. Pissed as hell, Philip turns to them with a murderous look on his face, questioning if they are really accusing the Lacan family of using black magic at this moment. The Iron Mages stand their ground, so Seaman chooses to explain what happened. He chalks it off as a secret technique passed down by the Lacan family, a technique that was hidden for 500 years. Hearing this, the Iron Mages still can't believe how a swordsman family is equipped with secret magic techniques all of a sudden. Reina doesn't want to argue the details of what happened. She believes that even if it was the use of black magic, it helped save many lives in the process. She finds herself grateful and indebted to him and extends an apology for her reaction last time. Seaman is okay with what happened because it's only reasonable she was wary of him. Reina draws near him to clean the blood from his hands, begging him to give her this opportunity to help him. Seaman is okay with her doing that, so long as it relieves her in some way. Their conversation is interrupted by one of the vassals working for Reina. The man has exhausted himself just coming here. He wants to let everyone know that the mercenary Andre has gone missing, no longer to be found in the lodging or the waiting rooms. The scene switches to Count Monac, who has manipulated the battlefield by winning over Reina's rider. Now she's left with no one, and she can't fight either, despite having repaired the gigant. There are questions being raised about the gigant's sudden activation. For that, his own servant is bashed for his incorrect assessment. He begs for another chance to make things right, but the brutal Count Monac is disgusted by his mere presence and tells him to fuck off, basically. Monac wants to know about any other details that may have slid under the table. He doesn't want any interruptions stopping him from acquiring Princess Reina as his bride. The man believes that he will teach everyone a lesson on what he's truly capable of in this upcoming fight. Back to the Gigant Arena, the most anticipated match of the day is here. Princess Reina's mirror will be facing Count Monac's Achilles. The golden magnum opus of the Count is the city's champion, boasting nearly 80 victories as its winning streak without even enduring a single loss. This guy is the Michael Jordan of his sport. The commentators were eagerly anticipating Meyer's arrival, but it seems like the Gigant hasn't shown up yet. It seems like Princess Reina has abandoned the match, which is why the crowd has a displeased and harsh reaction for their wasted money. Monac is glad that she gave up because she couldn't find a rider to operate. He feels pity for her not accepting his marriage proposal right away. Let's revisit the situation with our gang before the fight. They came to learn that Andre was missing thanks to the Count's trickery. Even though Andre is supposed to be a loyal vassal of the family, it seems like he's betrayed them in the end. Reina's face is full of horror, but there's still the glaring issue regarding the gigant's difference in strengths. The princess's body trembles, unable to accept that this man stooped so low. Seaman becomes the voice of reason and asks if she will be forced to marry him by default if she abandons the match. That's why, despite his intrusion, he wants to help him in this sticky situation as well. Reina can't stomach the fact that he's going so far for no reason. The same goes for Philip, who wants to remind the young master about the accident that knocked him out for a month. Seaman expresses that he's not worried about something like that because he's got a different plan in mind. And now, we cut back to the battle arena, where the valiant Mir is making its way right in the nick of time. The commentators are proud that the warrior refused to turn tail despite facing an unstoppable monster. Monac is now extremely pissed, because his informants told him Reina didn't have any other riders to spare. His servant tries to explain that there really wasn't anyone, which makes him wonder if she ended up hiring a mercenary at the last second. Monac can't believe that a rogue mercenary would go out of his way to support the princess instead of taking his side in his own territory. Victor and Reina arrive just in time before the match begins. She's glad that they were able to make it, but it still doesn't confirm their victory. There's the problem regarding the performance of each individual gigant, and then there's the fact that the rider operating Achilles is the city's champion. However, Seaman thinks they'll be just fine. While it seems like his guard knight is nothing more than a clown, the man is extremely skilled as a pilot, and he's excited to participate in the fight. The unexpected gigant has made its arrival, but still, a number of variables are against its odds. The crowd is underwhelmed by Mir's size and specs, because they don't think it's capable of taking down the strongest there is. The entire arena roars in a giant laughter, and suddenly believes that they should have run away instead. Mir is regarded as a piece of junk that can't even move an inch from where it stands. Achilles' rider, on the other hand, gives him praise for not running away. At the same time, it's as clear as day how this match would be decided in everyone's eyes. He has no intention of holding back against Meyer. Philip responds that he's just going to let his actions do the talking. In order to test his confidence, Achilles comes roaring with a powerful blow. Even Philip can't help but agree that Achilles is an overwhelming strength machine. Yet he lunges forth to attack, knowing that size doesn't mean everything. Don't at me in the comments. Anyway, he tries to outdo him in speed, only to get shocked that Achilles is incredibly fast with his reflexes. Meyer dodges a powerful swing of his axe, sending shockwaves. Achilles is rather underwhelmed that his opponent turned out to be even weaker than he thought. The attack just now literally ripped apart the ground, a close call for Philip. He realizes just how bad the situation really is, since he's dealing with a rider with the proficiency of an expert knight. Endless attacks come flying towards Meyer, who is on the back foot and barely standing ground. He dodges yet another critical swipe. The commentators remark how Meyer is lasting far longer than anyone expected with his incredible speed. However, Victor is worried about the strategy since it may not last for very long. The princess tries to comfort him, reminding her butler about Philip's skill as a knight. Seaman believes in the man, knowing that he's already faced many knights before, proving his own skill. But still, seeing how Philip is basically running for his life in the battlefield, the mage thinks he needs to be taught a lesson later. He's starting to question if Achilles' rider ever gets exhausted. So this time, he forces a counterattack out of nowhere, which actually connects with his opponent. Unfortunately, the attack didn't even dent his armor, and instead has enraged Achilles even more. He decides that it's time to go all out, and unleashes his signature finishing move. The question is, can Philip really dodge this attack? Even he knows he's fucked. A loud explosion follows the attack. Achilles is stunned to find that his opponent actually dodged his ultimate strike. Meyer rises from behind, claiming that Rogers would seriously kill him if he found out what he just did. After all, everything is resting on his shoulders for the young master. Channeling his mana, Philip expresses that his opponent is going to regret this fight. He unleashes his full strength and prepares his blade. Achilles' rider is shocked to find someone activating an aura. He thinks he's met a worthy opponent at last. Suddenly, Count Monac comes screaming in his ear for fooling around. He can't believe that the best of the best is facing a hard time against a junk robot. He tries to remind him of the consequences that would follow if he loses the fight. So now, the rider thinks it's time to bring out the big guns. Achilles is done playing a fair fight and lunges forth with a powerful full swing. However, Philip is done toying around and claims that there won't be another fight to begin with. As soon as Achilles' attack misses and hits the ground, Philip disappears in a flash of a second. The next thing the big guy realized was that his arm had been chopped clean. It's an impossible level of aura and speed being casted inside a gigant. Achilles' rider remembers at last that there was once an undefeated legend of the gigant arena who disappeared 3 years ago. Meyer delivers the killing blow with his crackling electrical slash. As for the champion rider who disappeared is discussed to be someone from the Black Knight's phantom sword. The commentators have been left excited by the sudden upset. History has been made as Achilles is rendered incapable of fighting in moments. The undisputed winner of this match is Meyer the underdog. With the crowd chanting his name, Achilles' rider is glad to have encountered the Black Knight in battle. They had once fought each other 3 years ago in the Royal Arena. Right after he set a record, the man disappeared, which makes him question why he's back. Philip explains that he is indeed the undefeated Black Knight, who wants to help others in need. At the same time, he requests the rider to keep his identity a secret. Funnily enough, the other guy is fine with that, because he knows he's getting his ass fired from his job soon. The princess and her butler celebrate the joy of victory and are moved to tears. Seaman is overall happy to have contributed to this extent, and walks away content with his actions. The dude is stoked to see the betting board. Meyer's odds were specifically 21-1, and Seaman even put up the first 10,000 pesos for this risk, so now he'll reap an incredible reward. The calculated total earnings are revealed to be a staggering 210,000 in amount. Can't believe this man gambled his way to becoming Elon Musk. It's time for them to leave the city. Princess Reina is there to see them off, still grateful to everything they did for her. Seaman expresses that there's nothing to worry about as he was just trying to help. Regardless, even the princess knows that she caused trouble and doesn't have anything to show him appreciation. The noble is fine with that because he thinks they earned quite a bit of money by running into her, so it evens the trade. In all honesty, Seaman doesn't want to leave the city, but since they've caused a bunch of trouble, it may put him in danger if the people come to know that he's the descendant of the Lacan family. The princess realizes what he's talking about and apologizes for making his trip short-lived. The noble thinks it's fine for him, but for her, he recommends that she also leave the area for her own city. After all, that bastard Count Monac won't just give up so easily. Dude is currently wiping the floor with the rider who lost the fight. Victor agrees with the man, stating that they're required to leave at once. Seaman tells her that she doesn't need to worry about the refugees right now, because if she stopped here, then no one will be able to help them anyway. For the sake of a better future, Seaman thinks it's ideal to leave for now. Before he's able to finish his sentence, Reina claims that she has acknowledged the risks involved. At the same time, she doesn't want to do that, despite seeming like a stubborn hard-ass right now. She doesn't want to abandon her people without a symbol of hope. All she cares about is helping them. Hearing this, Seaman is surprised yet also impressed by her response. He wishes her well and the two exchange a handshake, looking forward to the day they run into each other again. Well, with their pressing problems regarding money solved, our boy initiates his return trip to be crowned the hero. Philip still can't believe that he willingly chose to bring the Iron Mages along, not after what they said. Seaman expresses that he did it for the lack of mages in their territory, because otherwise, there's just no way they'd be able to fix the giants in the family. Philip recommends him to fix the giant on his own, but the young master reminds him how stupid he sounds right now. He thinks it's clear as day why Philip is a bonehead, and orders him to return to Guardian their goods. Back at the Laken estate, there's an uproar being caused by the damn merchant Darren, even though they still had some time to spare. Darren can't stomach the fact that he betrayed his own people and ran away out of nowhere. He's done waiting around. Philip comes up to him and explains that he's the escort knight who has come to speak with him. Speaking of Seaman, he's still nowhere to be found. Darren realizes that Philip has come here to deliver something. He unboxes a chest of the required amount, even though it's barely been a week since he issued an ultimatum. This also means Darren's plans to take over the Lakan territory have been cut short, with his debts completely repaid. Philip roars at the Iron Mages to collect the amount and carry it to Darren's carriage at once. The merchant is at his wit's end, and tries to strike a meeting with the young master. However, the guard knight confidently brings out a letter in response. Seaman wrote the letter, describing how the merchant would try to hunt for another chance. But there's no point anymore since his debt is cleared, and he's considered nothing more than a trespasser in their territory. This time, he won't be protected by anyone, even if he causes a scene. Seaman lays down the imperial law, which emphasizes that nobles have the full right to execute any trespassers going around in their territory. This man's rage is clearly being channeled throughout the letter, and it ends with Seaman's advice to the merchant to leave, unless he wants to receive the Gojo Satoru treatment of being split in half. The merchant squeaks in terror, realizing he's got 3 seconds to bolt away. He instantly boards his carriage and runs off like a coward, cursing the young lord. Philip is satisfied with this outcome, glad to have shown just how terrifying the young master truly is. The other vassals come calling for his name. Poor guy was expecting to receive a celebratory applause from them, but instead, Rogers is straight up about to jump this man for selling the statue of their hero. They strangle him for going to such lengths and demand to know where the young master went. Philip tries to explain the situation, but these clowns aren't having it. The knight reveals where the young master is staying, and it's the place we all know about, the Demon King's Tower. He opens the giant doors, welcoming his old home that is now a mess of a place. Turning on the lights with a flick of his fingers, the mage is at least glad the structure is standing even after 5 centuries worth of abuse. Suddenly, he remembered the exact spot he and his lover used to enjoy their conversations in, the only place where Katarina lives. That's why Seaman wants to protect and endear the magic tower no matter what. However, he came here for a different reason today. Placing his hand on the wall, he wonders if this is going to work like it used to. We see an activation of a magic spell which unlocks a secret door. He's glad that it works like a charm, and the place is preserved like it used to be. Now it's time he takes what rightfully belonged to him. Descending down his labyrinth, Seaman goes on a rant on how one can easily expunge a curse. The only way to do that is to wield a stronger mana than the power of the curse itself. Or at least that is what he heard a long time ago. He comes before a room and opens it. Seaman is rather satisfied that someone protected the house in his absence. Ahead we see a small container with a red glowing object inside. Seaman is glad that it's not noisy anymore. He greets the demon Horith resting inside the container. Now let's invest 5 centuries into the past. Deep in the demonic territory, the Black Mage came in his lust for power. Activating Death Bullet, he annihilated the creatures around him, leaving him exposed to the one ruler of the territory. This demon shares an appearance similar to a human's. Horith was surprised to discover that he took down multiple fortresses with ease. She's also surprised to find out that he's quite young for his age, which is slightly disappointing, yet impressive for a talented human. That's why she's willing to show him mercy by allowing him the chance to ask anything. After all, it's only right to reward him for his effort. However, Seaman becomes very annoyed with her endless chatter and mockingly asks if a demon's yapping somehow increases their rank too. This obviously provoked Horith as he took advantage of her mercy. She thinks he's a fool for becoming arrogant after defeating low-level demons. Horith wanted to show him just how powerful the demons under her command truly are. However, not even the High Demon anticipated the Golem army to come bursting through to the magician's help. The High Demon was impressed. The battle between the golems and her guards began, as both clashed against each other, leaving just the two of them on the battlefield now. It was a mage fighting a demon. Both came swinging to kill each other at full speed. Their agonizing battle ended with Seaman standing as the victor. He intended to convert Horath's essence into demonic energy, which made her wonder about his greater ambitions to change the world. However, the ruthless black mage had no reason to tell her anything, and swiftly reformed her into becoming a demonic stone. He remembers the process of defeating Horath, which was one of the most difficult battles he had ever faced. In the off chance you incorrectly absorb demonic energy, it releases you into a rage state. Many people end up becoming horrifying monsters just because of that. At the time, Seaman didn't want to test his guts and absorb the power because of the risk factor involved. But eventually, he learned the correct method to absorb demonic energy. At the time, he reached the 9th circle of magic and no longer required its power. It became unused until 5 whole centuries later, with Seaman putting the stone in his mouth and absorbing it. Suddenly, a strong gush of spasms courses through his body. He feels pain and screams until Seaman discovers himself in a place called the Mind's Realm. Turns out that he survived the devouring process of the demonic energy, but just up ahead is a demon with crimson-red energy. It's Horath, and she's rather surprised to find a stranger here. There's a big problem, and it's the fact that Seaman is no longer at the same level of strength he used to be. 500 years have also passed, and yet she possesses overwhelming demonic energy. Seaman attempts to speak to her, but the demon cuts him off, questioning his identity. She takes him down in a single attack, realizing that Seaman is nothing more than a weakling of his former strength. She's confirmed who he is, which leaves the question of what he's doing here. The mage explains that he came to borrow her vessel, a rather surprising offer. Horath wonders if his bold approach will still work when his body is so weak at its current state. She's enjoying choking the man who trapped her for centuries. Not only that, he's been reduced to a fraction of his strength and wants her help. It's an entertaining sight for her. Our boy is getting choked so hard he thinks his neck is about to pop off any second. He grabs her hand and asks if she's truly fine with ending him here. After all, he came with a proposal, and she's already trying to end him. In the back of his mind, Seaman is aware of the demon's intentions to use his body. That's why she isn't injuring him gravely. Interested to hear him out, she lets him go, willing to acknowledge his bold approach and bravery. The confident High Demon questions if the mage will be able to tolerate her power, especially since he's already broken his magic circle. Seaman lays out an offer that she can take over his body if he's incapable of doing that, which would be the best deal possible for her. But Horath desires a simpler means of doing things, and with a snap of her fingers, she puts Seaman's through a wave of pain. She plans to torture him for a long while, and thinks that it's justified for him to suffer this much after what he did. At this point, Seaman realizes that his body is experiencing the effects of mind control magic. Horath is sadistically enjoying his suffering. It comes to a point that Seaman passes out with just mere works of mind magic. The High Demon is extremely disappointed with how weak he's become. Seaman maintains his consciousness, claiming that she's just the loudmouth he remembers. High Demon doesn't get what he's scheming, since he doesn't possess the same mana or magic circle of his prime. However, Seaman expresses that despite both of those things being the truth, he's more than capable. He disappears into thin air. The mage who acquired 9th circle magic can simply never fall victim to mind control magic. We see his avatar manipulating Horath's mind instead, giving her chills from the experience. She enjoys battling him, and is even more impressed that he managed to acquire the 9th circle of magic. Seaman is happy to show her the effects, but she thinks it will be enough. What really bothers her is that, even after he obtained so much power, he couldn't achieve his goals of changing the world. However, Seaman claims that he's far from finished. His ambitions are resolute, and he will in fact change the world no matter what. Hearing this, the demon shares that while she's uncertain of how he'll use her powers, she thinks it should be okay if he has reached the 9th circle. Horath confirms that he's confident in his abilities for a reason. After all, in the likelihood she did take over his body, she could never step past the 7th circle. That's why, instead of her, she wants him to be the one to obliterate the world using her powers. Horath fades, leaving her energy in his hands, while Seaman hopes to do his best to truly accomplish his objectives. She reminds him that a second failure won't be tolerated. Seaman wakes up from the exhausting experience of having absorbed the demon crystal. He immediately activates Dark Flame to test his powers. Turns out he's still at the 3rd circle level, but he's garnered a foundation for himself, which should be good enough for the time being. He also knows that Horath could have been able to control his body with ease, but she still decided to leave her fate in his hands. He hopes to satisfy her with his goals. Since he possesses deep knowledge about magic circles already, he thinks that restoring his powers to the 9th circle won't be as difficult as last time. Still, It will take a while for him to gather enough demonic energy to be able to do that. That's why immediate action is a must. Seaman finds his way to a different room, this time calling out for other beings who have rested well for 5 centuries. The Black Mage places his hand on the ground, activating a spell that resurrects his golems from the ground. This way, he has restored a fraction of his original powers. Back at Lemire City, we transition to Count Monarch's residence, where he is beating the crap out of his subjects. Mylon is begging for mercy as the rider who lost in the fateful match. However, Count Monarch expresses his agitation in a different context. He doesn't care about the fate of the match. Rather, he's suspicious of him secretly working under Princess Reina, especially considering the difference in the gigant specs. Mylon shouts his loyalty to the Count, claiming that he would never do such a thing as an honorable knight. However, Count Monarch isn't satisfied with those words. Mylon is about to meet his hand with a blade ready to sever his head. In one last attempt to save his own life, he claims to have knowledge on the mere gigant's rider. He talks about how he faced this warrior 3 years ago and how they were unstoppable. Mylon doesn't have any idea who they're connected with, and nobody really knows about the Black Knight's identity. Count Monarch figures that he's got nothing more useful to say, and despite his contribution just now, the poor guy loses his life while begging to be spared. One of his assistants informs him about Reina's decision to stay in the city for the safety of the refugees. The Count wants them to keep an eye on her for a while. Additionally, he wants them to investigate the rider who boarded the mere gigant. He's frustrated and wants to see this man for himself and judge if they will be an obstacle to his plans. Since a long time ago, the Loken territory has continually thrived thanks to the nearby river and fertile lands. Yet, many have left their houses abandoned now with no signs of development. The 3 villages in this territory are close to becoming deserted ghost towns now. Seaman fixates his attention on the accountant, who he has restrained for his answers. He scares Humpty Dumpty over here, reminding him that they're responsible for putting the territory in such jeopardy. Dixon tries to clear his name, claiming that there wasn't any other way to resolve the problem, and that he did his absolute best. Seaman stands over his head with his sword raised, mocking him for his words. While he enjoys the thought of having an egghead over here hung in the middle of the town square, he's got more to ask from him. There's the fact that Dixon is an individual whose capabilities and talents are recognized by the Empire. This man turned down many other offers from other estates, and chose to stick with the Lacan family despite its troubles, proving his loyalty. Seaman took it upon himself and requested the best financial books from the previous years. Dixon proved himself by fulfilling the request in one day, so he's actually quite impressed by the egghead. Dixon is happy to boast his best quality. He's good at math and can solve many problems in his head. But to the noble, this is exactly the underlying issue. Dixon doesn't get what he's referring to. The young master grabs his shirt and tosses him off the cliff as he screams for his life. Poor guy is being rolled like a cannonball while Seaman casually keeps up without any trouble. He ends up crashing on the ground and questions the meaning of such punishment. All of a sudden, Dixon sees one of the villages. The people of the Viscounty are broken, poverty-stricken, and have nowhere to thrive. Dixon can't believe it. He thought they were flourishing, so slums like these should never have come up. The young master questions how it really feels to finally see the results of his calculations. He made a critical error by trying to resolve human actions in numbers. He couldn't ever spend time with the villagers and see what was wrong with the village. So now, the resolute Seaman gives him an ultimatum. If Dixon cannot find the cause of their demolished state, he will be fired at once. The accountant realizes that he's in deep trouble and quickly introduces himself as the accountant of the Loken household. Now in Seaman's case, he's completely alright with seeing the fall of the hero's family. But for now, more pressing matters are at stake. His first mission is to improve the village so that he can eventually improve his magic circles. The scene transitions back to the family estate, where Philip is being held hostage. The vassals can't believe that the young master paid off the debt by gambling it off. They're all glad that the issue is at least resolved, but the fact that it was done through acts of gambling harms the perception of the household. The rest of the subjects are angry with the guard knight who didn't stop the young master from committing such an act. Rogers is pissed as hell, and young Philip knows he's about to catch some hands. Rogers wants to confirm if the young master's identity was exposed in Lemire City. To that, the guard knight replies that he's not crazy enough to do that. But then reality hits him. This stupid fool ended up announcing to the royal guards that they belonged from the Loken household. Bro realizes he's stupid as hell, while Rogers can't believe he's gone to such limits. The butler, on the other hand, thinks that it's only a matter of time until people would have found out anyway, since Count Monarch's information network is powerfully vast. He's the head of the city, and nothing escapes his ears. The moment he comes to know about the Lakon household's attack, it's possible he might retaliate by sending his men. In that case, they will all be doomed with nothing to fend for. After all, Monarch is a distant cousin of the Emperor and holds extreme power. Rogers recalls how this man expanded his territory through wars, and now, he's got every reason to strike down the Lakon territory. They all wonder what the young master is planning to subdue this threat. At last, the man himself makes his appearance, sick of their speeches. He startles them with his sudden entry, and asks about the ones who were spouting the reputation of the household. Seaman inquires if they should ignore evil deeds being committed for the sake of reputation alone. Rogers argues that they're trying to be realistic about the situation, since they can't face Count Monarch's incredible army, so they just wanted to tell him that his recklessness has just put them in grave danger. Seaman finds this frustrating and asks if they also earned the title of heroes by submitting to evil people in power. He reminds them that titled heroes are supposed to fight the worst adversities known to humankind in the name of justice. The butler argues that they're doing their best every day, but in response, only the question is fired back. Did they solve all the problems? Despite their efforts, they didn't do anything, and had the audacity to judge Seaman's methods of fixing the state of the household. Still rebellious, the butler argues that people could make a big deal about the family's reputation when they discover that gambling was used as a method to pay the debt. An agitated Seaman tells him to shut up as reputation never solved a hunger crisis. He reminds them of their sworn duty to protect the people of the Viscounty, the ones who are starving with inhuman living conditions. And yet these arrogant servants think they're doing things right. Seaman is done with their bullshit and declares that he will change everything going forward. If they don't agree with him, they're shown the door to leave. The butler tries to reason with him one last time, reminding the young master about the loyal servants who have stuck by the Laken family this entire time. However, the noble cares very little about these people. He wants to prove his determination and resolve. He commends Philip for his brilliance as a skilled captain. The guard knight thinks little of himself compared to the young master. Seaman believes that someone as skilled as him should have the right to be the knight captain. Rogers doesn't get what he's trying to say, so the noble shares what he's thinking. He wants them to duel it out for the title of knight captain. Poor Philip is begging for his life. He doesn't want to be a part of a challenge where he has to face his uncle and teacher. However, Rogers tells him to remain silent. He realizes that he's never gotten the chance to prove his skills to the young master. Seaman is looking forward to his performance. We jump ahead to the dueling arena where both fighters are gearing up for battle. It's been a few years since they last fought, but Philip is prepared to give it his all. Rogers is the same as he draws his sword. With the two swordsmen staring each other down, the fight begins. Seaman notes Philip's demeanor, realizing that he's nervous. It must imply Rogers' own strength. Since the guard knight has come to face dozens of knights in the past, Seaman is more than confident in Philip's ability. The first strike is dealt by the junior knight. His attack phantom sword connects with Rogers, or so he thought. It was blocked, though it was powerful enough to earn a compliment from his teacher. Philip assures his uncle that he's far different from what he used to be. Saying that, he dashes with such incredible speed that it leaves Rogers completely astounded. His speed forms numerous after images all around, finally revealing the real Philip attacking from behind. Rogers is starting to see the reason how Philip earned a compliment from the young master. However, he manages to foresee the attack and catch his opponent with ease, pummeling Philip into the ground. That one tackle knocked him out, but what's more, Rogers thrusted a charged kick, sending him flying in the air. Philip crashes in the arena, refusing to give up. However, the fight is already over with a blade resting against his neck. Rogers has won, decisively without using any techniques. Philip is forced to surrender, while the knight captain asks if the current display of his strength is enough to prove him worthy of being the commander. Pumped to see just what he's capable of, Seaman gives him a compliment. Let's cut to the training session. Rogers is training a bunch of his men while the young master is watching. Seaman is a little surprised that Philip lost so easily. He's having the dumbass bent over as punishment. Turns out Rogers is actually one of the 5 strongest swordsmen in the entire continent. Seaman realizes that if someone of Rogers' caliber ever decided to target him, he'd just die. He wants Philip to become his strength, and that's why he assigns him to be his official knight of escort. Hearing this, the guard knight is moved to tears because it means the young master entrusts him with much. He promises to do his best, to become the strongest and most reliable blade to protect his master. Seaman is delighted to hear that and tells him to rejoin the rest of their training. Among the 50 knights they have, 10 are considered experts. It's all thanks to the warrior family's lineage in sword mastery. Both Philip and Rogers are talents that many other estates would kill to acquire, which also shows why the family is in its current dreadful condition. That evening, the butler was shocked by the young master's actions once more. First he sold the statue, and now he's doing away with the family treasures without a second thought. The butler hollers at him for defaming the honor of the Lacan household. Seaman expresses that he's willing to do away with anything that brings him money. Slamming his hands on the table, the butler is growing tense and asks what would fuel the young master to take such a bold action. Seaman takes a moment to observe his reaction, and finally releases the truth. He wants them to know that the hero who protected them 5 centuries ago isn't going to help them anymore. The butler is offended to hear him foul the hero Lacan's legacy. However, Seaman offers a different perspective. He wants them to remember what put them in this position in the first place. It's because they believed in traditions and honoring the name of the hero. It's because of naive vassals like the butler that the family fell into ruin. Once more, the butler shifts the blame and directs it at the curse of the Demon King. Seaman points to his rebellious attitude and reminds him that their approach is wrong. They only blame the Demon King instead of focusing on their own shortcomings. The noble wants his butler to know this very well, that he will succeed the legend of the hero Lacan. That's why, if his servants are still tied to the traditions of the past, Seaman is prepared to wipe them from the history of the family. To emphasize his point, he thrusts the blade into the table. The butler Hans is left having a mental breakdown as others come for him. He remembers the day the young master was a little boy who he cared for. But now he has changed so much. The other servants are sad to see Hans in such a miserable state. Knowing how the young master frequently visits the Demon King's castle, Hans has come up with an explanation of his own. He refuses to change his attitude and still believes all of this is happening because of the curse of the Demon King. Anyway, Philip is out here begging to take Hans's advice just this one time because what he said just now was too harsh. But Seaman doesn't think much of it and believes otherwise. He isn't letting the butler have any of it, and intends to corner him as much as possible. He seems to be implying something here, but Seaman chooses not to explore that matter for now. Instead, he asks if Philip has completed the task he was assigned. The guard knight reminds his master that he's being far too loud. He was able to obtain some information from Hans. Seaman teases him by raising his voice and asking about it. Philip whispers what he found, and the scene ends there. Fast forward to Seaman and Philip visiting a captive's cell. The noble is surprised by what he heard and what he's seeing right now. This inmate looks dead from the inside and out. Philip explains that he moved just yesterday. Suddenly, the chained man's voice demands to know their identity. Seaman feels overwhelming pressure and acknowledges the strength of a fifth circle magician, possibly even stronger than that. Channeling magical aura around his body, the man repeats his chilling question, wanting to know about their identity. The chained-up prisoner lifted his head, his lifeless eyes staring right into the young lord's soul. Luke had heard from his people that this man had been locked up in the dungeons for a long time now, but he seems just fine physically speaking. Recognizing the young lord's voice, the captive's demeanor changed into fear. Luke can't fathom why his fiefdom's sole Iron Mage is rotting away in his dungeons. Surprisingly, the Iron Mage seems upset that the young lord would step foot in the dirty underbelly of the dungeons for his sake. Luke remained cool and collected. He can't stand by and do nothing while a valuable asset is lazing away inside his territory. From the reports of the guards, it seems like the Iron Mage has been trying to harm himself by abstaining from any food or drink. He was the one who chose to get locked up in the dungeons. He believes that due to his carelessness, the Gigant accident that rendered the young lord unconscious is his fault. He wishes for nothing more than to atone for that sin with his lowly life. Luke scolded him for believing that a life is only worth that much. Furthermore, it was already confirmed that the Gigant accident was no one's fault. Still, the Iron Mage posits that it would not have happened in the first place if he had examined the machine more thoroughly. He wants to take responsibility for his oversight and demands to be punished. This is starting to seriously piss the Demon King off. He gets that this dude is just one of those incredibly loyal vassals, but his stubbornness is causing quite a headache. It can't be helped. Since the Iron Mage wished for it, Luke agreed to deliver justice. With stern eyes, he ordered Philip to fetch him a sword. Surprised, the guard knight could not believe what he just heard. The prisoner closed his eyes, seemingly prepared to forfeit his life for a crime he wasn't even on the hook for. Luke pulled out the blade. Since this fool practically begged him for a punishment he shall receive. The young lord raised his blade, indifference in his eyes. With one swift stroke he slashed and silence ensued. Instead of blood dripping on the floor, the sound of chains hitting the concrete can be heard. The young lord freed the prisoner by cutting the chains holding him in place. Confused, he demanded to know what the meaning of this gesture was. Luke asserted that it would benefit him more to use a talented man instead of killing one. And if there's one thing he can't stand, it's taking a loss. He is planning to work this sole Iron Mage to the bone. The level of overwork would be more torturous than death itself. So it is the Iron Mage's duty to pledge his lifelong allegiance to the young lord. He must swear it on his honor as a magician and engrave the moment onto his heart. Luke tagged Philip in to bring out what they had prepared beforehand, catching his poor guard by surprise. Philip dropped the contents of the heavy bag in front of the Iron Mage. Gold coins rained down on the dungeon floor. The man asked where the young lord got this much cash, and Luke retorted that it was not too big of a deal. They just have around 70,000 pesos to play around with. From now on, the Iron Mage must use this money in preparation for raising the magic tower. He is tasked to buy any necessary grimoires and procure the equipment required to repair and manufacture gigants. Unlike the Lord of the Past, Luke plans to heavily invest in magic. It's an Iron Mage's job to make sure that incidents never happen in the process of doing so. With tears streaming down his eyes, the man cannot forgive himself for causing harm to the young lord. He doesn't know if it would be right for him to receive such goodwill. Luke was quick to correct his perception of what was happening here. This is not a form of goodwill. This is just another form of punishment. So, the old Iron Mage better strengthens his resolve. The young lord does not forgive so easily after all. After seeing his boss's radiant aura, the hopeless prisoner was moved. He kneeled on one knee and properly introduced himself as Mute, the Lacan family's Iron Mage. He swore that until the day of his death, he would devote his everything to atoning for his unforgivable sins. On the side, Philip was impressed by the rich flow of Sir Mute's incredible mana. Luke reckons that Mute is a man without a shred of flexibility, but his stubbornness can definitely serve as a sturdy beacon in times of crisis. The young lord also left the two mechanics they yanked out of Loomer in Mute's care. From the shadows, Hans continued to tail the young lord silently. He was quite impressed to see the young man convince the stubborn Mute back into employment. Hans can admit that Luke had become truly incredible after the incident. But for some reason, the old butler still feels anxious. A month later, the energy in the fiefdom had drastically shifted for the better. The family is changing, and it's happening at a rapid pace. Philip, who was far from earnest, is now training harder than anyone else. He swings his sword with a more solid purpose. Iron Mage Mute, who had hidden himself in shame due to past mistakes, is back on his feet. He is now taking the initiative to train his new recruits. While Hans and his posse were monitoring the barracks, they were interrupted by a familiar voice. It was none other than that bald accountant, Sir Dixon. It seems like he's been hard at work. The whole fiefdom was in chaos, searching for this little bald bastard. Hans has a lot of questions that need to be answered. Sir Dixon apologized for unintentionally causing a fuss, but he was gone for a good reason. It's a long story, but he believes that it would be better to show Hans what he's been up to instead of yapping. The bald little genius led Hans to the outskirts of the town, and the old man almost passed out due to shock. The slums that were once a breeding ground for misery had undergone a massive makeover. Sir Dixon elevated the impoverished area in just a month. He even established a new market in town. Unlike before, anyone is free to sell their wares now. This was decided and implemented together with all the residents. Now everyone is enthusiastic about discussing how to improve their fiefdom together. The old and inefficient traditions are getting abolished. Sir Dixon firmly believes that the fiefdom of humanity's hero is looking as it should now, lively, bright, and optimistic. Hans is still struggling with some of the changes, but the proof is right in front of him right now. The fiefdom might be trending upward, but there is no denying that everything happening now goes against 500 years of Lacan family policies. Hans consulted Rogers about his gripe. The knight captain admitted that he too had the same concerns at first, but he chose to let it all go a while ago. The young lord has proven himself effective with tangible results. He's done a stellar job. Hans wanted to bring someone to his side, but Rogers had already bought into the young lord's methods. The knight captain believes that as vassals, it is their duty to place their unwavering trust in the young lord. With that said, he left the room and went straight to the training ground. Within a relatively short span of time, everyone has already been won over by the young lord's unorthodox ways. Perhaps Hans is just holding on to the past. A week later, in Luke's study, Hans organized all the documents the young lord needed for research. He felt sorry for working with the old man so much, but Hans is as reliable as can be. The torn ceiling of the study leaks while it rains outside, but the work must go on. Hans promised to resolve the issue regarding this leaky setup by the next day. If needed, the old butler even offered to repair the room himself. That's when Luke called him out for having his priorities wrong. While they endure a little downpour now and then, those who have no home to shelter from the rain are overflowing in their fiefdom. Instead of focusing on themselves, they should be thinking about their people first. It is their duty after all. The more Hans comes to know the drastically changed young lord, the more he finds that following him is the right thing to do. However, he's still unable to determine what Luke's true intentions are. So, the next night, Hans busted out his shockingly impressive parkour skills to traverse the nearby woodlands. He is trying to keep a healthy distance while carefully observing Luke, who has inexplicably entered the woods with nothing but a sack on his shoulder. Every night, the young lord secretly heads somewhere. Tonight, Hans managed to tail Luke successfully. It's an open secret that Luke's nightly excursions usually lead to the Demon King's castle. The old butler doesn't even want to consider his suspicions, but there's a real possibility that the young lord might be taken over by the Demon King's curse. But this night's excursion wasn't a castle session. Even Hans was surprised that the young lord stopped in the middle of the woods. He worried that he had been caught. Then came some gruff-looking people that the young lord inexplicably hired to do some unknown job. They boasted that the task was no harder than stealing candy from a baby. Hans recognized these men as the bandits banished from the fiefdom for their criminal plundering. As it turns out, they have been living in the woods near the fiefdom. Based on their camp, there seemed to be a lot of them. Luke was pleased with how reliable the bandits were. With his sack in hand, the young lord asked his criminal team if they could finally begin. The bandits asked if the young lord prepared a gift for them inside the sack. One of them pulled out a book and assured Luke that they made sure to understand its contents. Hearing this exchange from his cover, Hans became even more confused. Why would the young lord give those bandits a book? The old butler is too far away to hear anything else clearly. He just can't make sense of Luke's plan here. As it turns out, the bandits were just happy to finally learn how to read. Luke painstakingly summarized the plots of stories for them, making sure that they understood even the hardest parts. The citizens of the woods felt overwhelming gratitude to their young lord. Because of him, even the children in the community have learned how to read, and thanks to the food and medicine he brought, so many of those with illnesses have been cured. A bandit's wife even regained her ability to walk. They view Luke Reawakens as their community's savior and their family's benefactor. While he is glad to be of help, there is a price to everything the young lord does. But the bandits are prepared. While they may have spent their lives as criminals, they are not ungrateful animals. All Luke has to do is give the order, and the mountain bandits will do anything he asks them to do. Luke emptied his sack on the ground, revealing more literature and a mound of gold coins. From afar, Hans reckoned that his boss had probably dropped around 10,000 pesos along with the books. The bandits were confused. They understood why the books were there, but the money was quite a bit of a surprise. So Luke simply cited that the answer is inside the books. To understand what he's getting at, they better get to reading. Upon opening, one of the books is filled with documents about resident registration and land transfer. Luke just handed them official documents that acknowledge the mountain bandits as official residents of Reawakens territory. With these papers, they'll have the right to claim their land as their own. Luke plans to build a town nearby, expanding his fiefdom. Hearing that they have been officially recognized as proper citizens, the bandits couldn't help but become emotional. They are criminals who have betrayed their lord. They're already grateful to Luke for helping them now and then. They think they are too far gone to accept citizenship and land ownership after everything they've done. All they know is how to steal from others for the sake of survival. Although they are grateful, they also know that the current residents of the fiefdom will never accept them. Luke is well aware of this issue, but he's not fully accepting the bandits either. Even if they had no choice, plundering is still a heavy crime in his land. However, he also recognized that the Reawakens family's failing governance forced them into a life of thievery. That is a crime that Luke cannot forgive. The mountain bandits are notorious thieves, but they always avoid hurting their victims. Luke believes that they still deserve a chance to atone for their crimes. The gold in the sack is half a year's worth of payment to hire the bandits. From now on, they will become paid mercenaries. Before, they made the people of the land fear them. It's only fair that they prepare to die fighting on the people's behalf. This is their path to atonement. This is the future that the young lord wants for those neglected by the failed system. However, the path they will walk toward that future will be up to them. As a real leader, Luke is willing to put his trust in his people. Moved to tears by his impassioned reasoning, the bandits raised their weapons and vowed to lay their lives on the line to protect the territory. As far as Hans is aware, bandits within the territory are considered targets for subjugation. That is the rule of the Reawakens family. Seeing how Luke resolved the problem in his own unique way, the old butler finally confronted his archaic and rigid beliefs. He realized that all he ever did was ignore the screams of the alienated. He can finally see that he is a fool who misunderstood the young lord's intentions, questioning him at every turn. Hans can finally see the light. Luke Reawakens is the man who will uplift the territory to greater heights. He inwardly promised to make up for his grave mistake by serving the young lord until his bones gave in. Meanwhile, Luke was just relieved that the old man had finally let his guard down. Hans was starting to become annoying to deal with, but this little show should fix that. Finally, he said farewell to his newly hired mercenaries. The crying butler watched as he retreated back to the trail. Luke reached a clearing and heaved a sigh of relief. It was tough, but it's safe to assume that most of the people around him have been taken care of now. That means the real work can finally start. Luke took a glowing apparatus out of his bag and stared at it mischievously. Back in the Demon King's castle, Luke converted the whole place into his personal sanctuary, complete with roaming golems once more. Although he is satisfied with his progress, the nagging problem of his territory's development always comes down to cost. He managed to easily regain the trust of his people by improving their lives drastically, but the cost of doing so is too much. He already spent majority of his funds earned in Lemaire. To maintain this rate of growth, the fiefdom is going to need a steady source of income. With a playful grin, he wonders if he should resort to that thing. He pointed at two golems silently doing their job. The young lord emanated black magic in his hand as he enlisted the golems' help. The poor little constructs of pure magic had not seen their boss for 500 years, but the fear was still there. No matter how many years have passed, the Demon King is still the Demon King. The very next day, Philip approached him with the issue of their swiftly dwindling lamer funds. It wasn't going to be enough to continue operating a fiefdom, but the bills are piling up. Philip is itching to go on another money-making journey, but Luke just shuts his ass up. He wants the records regarding the mine development plan in his hands as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Philip only found records of failed attempts to develop a mine decades ago. They tried looking within the territory, but there wasn't a single sign of a workable mining spot anywhere. Luke then asked why they even incurred so much debt to explore mining with such little chance of success. Philip awkwardly answered that they had to make suboptimal choices due to limited options at the time. The territory was in a horrible state due to a series of unfortunate events happening within a short period of time. And while the residents were moving away, the young lord was unconscious. Luke finally understood that his staff just tried to make things work. They had no choice but to hang on a rotten rope. With a failed harvest season, even maintaining the territory is impossible. However, something is off. He is certain that there should be a workable mine in the vicinity. Looking at the expedition map, he asked why there were no records of a particular area. Philip saw him pointing at the Rokia mountain range, and fear was plastered on his face. Scouting the area out was too difficult due to the abundance of monsters in the sector. They sent multiple knights over to map and scout the spot, but the monsters hiding within every corner of the region made it impossible. They had no choice but to safely return empty-handed. Seeing the smile on Luke's face, Philip can already tell that the devious young man is devising another one of his weird plans. Philip tries his best to preface how dangerous that place really is, but Luke is just salivating at the thought of finding what he's looking for in that monster-infested area. And so, he paid the infamous Rokia mountain range a visit as soon as he could. When he arrived, he thought Philip was just overreacting like usual, but the bastard actually had a reason to be fearful. Giant orcs, devious goblins, fearsome trolls, and all sorts of monstrosities have settled and conquered the sector. Luke found it odd, though. These monsters of different races usually live within separate regions far from each other. So why are they cooperating in one location? Maybe they have adapted to deal with human forces effectively. No matter the reason, these monsters don't seem diplomatic at all. An orc tried to hack him down in one swing but missed. Luke was fast enough to get out of the attack's trajectory, but this is not a fair one-on-one. The small and medium-sized monsters quickly surrounded him from all sides, and they were hungry to draw blood. Since these bastards think they're so tough, it's time to show who's the boss. From now on, Luke will be taking care of these pesky beasts himself. From his black magic circle spawned the two supersized golems that he randomly picked out of his castle workers. These two golems should be enough to deal with a smattering of different monsters, right? An orc tried to bash the golem's solid head, but it didn't do any damage. The golem responded by launching a solid punch that knocked the wind out of the orc's sails. Luke smiled. This little operation is going better than he thought it would. It's good to know that the future mana stones could handle powering his old-school golems. As soon as one of the orcs fell, the goblins came dropping out of the trees with their weapons drawn. Of course, it was a tragic mismatch. These little green boys can't even make a little dent on golem bodies. The magical constructs continue to mow down every beast in the vicinity without mercy. It is working out surprisingly well, but more monsters just keep on coming out of the woodwork. Dealing with the endless waves is difficult, but there is a method to make this process a lot faster. Luke scanned the area and singled out the strongest aura of the bunch. Judging by one blind orc's intensity all the way from the back, Luke determined that this big guy must be the leader. Luke stretched his legs and decided to join in on the fun. He coated his body with physical strengthening and postured to go in. With a singular quick step, he vanished, confusing the orcs. Since the young lord doesn't have much time on hand to get dirty, he's going for the quickest winning strategy. He flash-stepped behind the orc leader and used his black magic to cast obedience directly to the big guy's skull. The monster growled and groaned as his mind got taken over. Obedience is just one technique from the long list of brainwash magic spells. As soon as Luke finished, his mark was left on the orc leader's forehead. It was a success. It looks like the orc leader is his subordinate now. The underlings of the orc leader stayed put, unsure of what to do. Now that the tides have turned to his side, the first ones to give up were the goblins. They recognized that they were clearly outmatched. Even the lizard girls were starting to falter in confusion. Luke promised the monsters that they wouldn't be hurt if they just brought their respective leaders along. And so, the harsh glow of black magic sparked over and over within the monster-infested sector of the woods. Luke's last victim was the leader of the goblins. As he choked and put the monster under his brainwashing magic, the little critter tried to resist and failed. It tried to break free of the chokehold, but Luke was completely unbothered. Once obedience has taken hold, the goblin passes out from getting his brain fried. The young lord turned to the other goblins and posited a question for the monsters now under his command. He had heard that there was a place where dwarves would come and go. He wanted to know if there was any truth about that rumor. The normal goblins had no idea about the place he was talking about. Just as he expected, normal monsters do not know anything about the place he's looking for. Thankfully, the newly brainwashed goblin leader has woken up. Speaking in perfect human tongue, the goblin leader assured him to worry not. He swore to guide his new master to the place Luke was looking for. After hours of traversing the woods, they came upon a dead end blocked by boulders. According to the goblin leader, this should be the entrance. There are traces of severe landslides, but the spot is emitting a strange vibe. As Luke was wondering just what could be in there, he noticed that the monsters were feeling some discomfort. Just standing near the dead end is making them shiver in fear. What could be inside for these fearsome monsters to be this terrified? Luke will just have to find out by going in. He raised his hand and cast Dark Flame, lighting up the surroundings with his dark fire. Without an ounce of hesitation, he launched the explosive spell into the pile of boulders. Just as he expected, the mine shaft hidden behind the boulders was revealed. It's been here the entire time. When the boulders were cleared away, the fearful reaction of his monster subordinates became a lot worse. So, he granted them permission to go back to their routine. In exchange for not wiping them out, they must agree to never bring harm to humans ever again. All they have to do is spend their time peacefully until Luke gives their next orders. It looks like the monsters are happy to stay hidden until their new boss bestows them another task. But they might also just be happy to get the hell out of the freaky mine shaft. Luke reckons that these monsters will surely be in handy in the future. By his lonesome, the young lord pushed forward and got started for the sake of fixing his fiefdom's financial problem. 5 centuries ago, the societal structure of the world was a bit different. With their overwhelming techniques and force, humans oppressed other races. Seeing beastkins as lesser than them, they treated other races as slaves to be owned, punished, and worked to the bone. They wished only humans would be left on the continent. As such, Seaman, who was widely known as the Demon King, began to burn down one race's kingdom after another. For the other races, he quickly became a beacon of hope and change. His golems were their liberators, and the man himself was looked at as their savior. In the Demon King's tower, he remembered taking in countless meetings and audiences with his monstrous subjects. One orc had a particularly sad case. He came seeking refuge at the Demon King's tower with his 10 surviving tribesmen. In this case, Seaman passed down the order to make a base for the orcs in a different territory where they will take over construction work. Hearing his savior give him and his remaining tribesmen a new lease on life moved the orc to tears. That day, Seaman was hoping to get out of his kingly duties early, but fate had other plans in mind. Next up on the line was a stubby bearded man with pointy ears. He complained that it was not right to make an elderly man wait for so long. The Demon King's lapdog almost tore the stubby man for showing such a disrespectful attitude, but Seaman immediately knew what he was looking at. A dwarf, a representative of an earthen race that possesses the greatest technology, came here to talk with him. On top of that, the energy radiating from this visitor is on a whole different level. So he humbly remarked that he never could even dream of getting a chance to meet a legendary ancient dwarf. Mr. Ancient Dwarf liked how perceptive the Demon King was. It's not easy to tell him apart from a regular dwarf and from appearance alone, after all. Getting straight to business, Seaman asked him for the purpose of his visit when humans are far from matching dwarves when it comes to tech and force. Hearing the word humans soured the ancient dwarf's mood. While humans lack technology, they're still out there indiscriminately destroying nature. Because of their endless expansion, plenty of ecosystems have been ruined. Picking up on what he's putting down, Seaman asked if the dwarves wanted to help him in his mission to wipe humanity out. The ancient dwarf confirmed. If the Demon King can clean humanity up, then the dwarves will use their technology to improve his base. Seaman laughed at the absurdity of this exchange. Despite how it looks, he's still human too. When he asked if that was going to be a problem, the ancient dwarf laughed as if he had just heard the funniest joke ever. He belched and roared, leaving the Demon King confused. The denizens of the world had long since discarded the view that Seaman is human. To them, he is simply the Demon King. Race has nothing to do with it. Back to the present. That Demon King is exploring the sizable mine that the ancient dwarf mentioned to him all those centuries ago. It's good to know that he wasn't lied to, but he found it odd that the place seemed to be holding up quite well instead of being in a state of disrepair. This is just a testament to the ability of dwarves to create lasting structures. They are still unmatched. With the amount of natural ore deposits at the entrance, the young lord reckons that as long as they have people willing to work as miners, the territory would have no worries about their wallet for now. Pushing deeper into the tunnels, he found something odd. The construction abruptly stopped at an odd point. The next tunnel was boarded tightly with wood. The uncertainty is giving Luke the creeps. After he died, he heard that the mine had been occupied by humans. Maybe those humans messed something up. Despite that, there are plenty of valuables scattered about. No matter how rushed they were, the dwarves who dearly cherish their precious tools won't leave their possessions behind. Something is clearly fishy in these tunnels. Suddenly the ground started shaking, and debris started dropping. Behind him, a massive elongated body rushed past slithering. Its red frame dove into the ground, emerged, and dove back down again. In the chaos, Luke threw his torch away to free both of his hands. When the red beast finally showed its whole body, the young lord finally understood why his brainwashed monsters were terrified of this place. In front of him was the master of the mine, the great worm. With its rocky body, split tongue, and sharp fangs, the great worm snarled and roared wildly. This big guy must be the reason why the mine was abandoned. This little bastard worm is quite a big hurdle for his financial plan, though. What else is there left to do other than get rid of the problem by force? With an explosion of black magic, Luke summoned his 2 trusty golems. They are ready to face off against the great worm. With a loud and guttural grumble, the worm tried to assert dominance and intimidate. Unfazed, the young lord ordered his golems to go sicko mode. The great worm flexed its elongated body and shot out like a bullet. Thankfully, the golems were fast and strong enough to hold it down in place and halt its momentum. They were pushed back by a few feet, but the 2 big boys managed to trap the worm in its position. Luke stood there looking at the massive worm without moving a muscle, just absolutely mogging the thing while aura farming. He ordered his golems to stay still and keep the monster steady. Luke jumped up to the mine's ceiling with black magic coalescing in his hand. He successfully formed another explosive dark flame spell. From above, he shot the attack with impressive speed and destructiveness. This much should be enough to calm the angry worm down for a bit. While he is painfully aware that his magic has weakened by an atrocious margin, it's still absurd to see that his dark flame can't even leave a scratch on the monster's body. To make matters worse, the grip of the golems is starting to loosen up. When they finally slipped, the great worm quickly shook them away and aimed for Luke's falling body. Without proper control of mid-air movement, the young lord is an easy target to gobble up. Fortunately, one of the golems managed to climb the back of the worm to deal some damage and cause disruption. Mr. Golem pounded the worm's frame, forcing the monster back down to the ground. Luke appreciated the clutch move as if he was having fun and not betting on his own life. He saw the worm closing its maw and behaving oddly and felt his stomach sink. The young lord tried to warn his golem to watch out, but it was too late. The worm shot out and planted the golem squarely into the ground with fearsome force. While one of the golems was stunned on the ground, the worm sped up and went for the ores in the vicinity. Luke was shocked to see the beast munching on the ores to recover from the damage. After eating the metallic ores nearby, its rocky body started producing metal ore protrusions. He's witnessing a monster consuming rocks to evolve. Bro is literally fighting a fucked up Pokemon. This is going to make things a lot harder than he initially thought. With both golems back in the mix, Luke is still struggling to do damage. No matter what skill he uses, he's barely tickling the worm. He has no other choice than to run and think of a better strategy for the meantime. He sets his sights on the exit, thinking that if he wants to win, he needs to bring a gigant here to fight on equal footing. Unfortunately, the worm is too smart to let him get out of its domain so easily. It tossed a debris to block the exit. With the only way out blocked off, Luke's frustrations increased. The beast hissed with vitriol as if itching to snack on the golems and their owner. At that moment, Luke realized something. If a monster the size of the great worm came wandering about outside, it would have left marks all around the forest. But he can't recall seeing such signs. That means this thing only lives inside the mines. If that's truly the case, there is no point in bringing and relying on a gigant to fight the beast. A gigant can't fit in the mines anyway. This complicates things, but Luke knows that the key to fighting losing battles is finding weaknesses. If he can do that, he won't struggle this hard. While his golems are distracting and annoying the worm, he noticed that it was reacting oddly when attacked at certain spots. Just now, when his golem grabbed onto the metallic ores, the worm's mana flow was disrupted. This could be something. So the young lord ran away and tasked his struggling golems to buy as much time as they could. If his hypothesis is correct, then there must be something he can use nearby. He ran while scanning the mine, trying his hardest to find the solution. Finally, his eyes darted to one side of the mine shaft and lit up. He spotted a necessity for high-level mining, an ancient dwarf's pickaxe. Luke immediately sprinted and grabbed the pickaxe, believing that this tool might give him a chance to deal with the damage. He cast physical strengthening in his body and mapped out his plan of attack. In the blink of an eye, he used his enhanced physical abilities to close the gap and scale the worm's rocky body. As soon as he reached the top of the monster's head, he raised the pickaxe, excited to start mining. Just as he expected, the special pickaxe is a highly effective tool to shatter sturdy ores. His pickaxe swing made the great worm writhe in pain, its erratic movement throwing Luke off balance. As he falls, he wonders if he did not exert enough force in his swing. Finally, the chaotic movement made the young lord's grip slip, free-falling down from a precarious height. Back in the Laka Manor, Philip is getting chewed up for letting the young lord slip away and disappear every night. Poor Philip tried to reason that the young lord was just too good at disappearing without warning. Incensed by his reasoning, Rogers asked Philip what kind of appointed escort knight was unaware of his lord's whereabouts. Crying in frustration, Philip insisted that he really tried his best. Every time he tried to follow the boss, the tricky young lord kept disappearing time and time again. Some residents say that he frequently visits the Demon King's castle, and that's a whole other headache in and of itself. Rogers didn't think twice about it since he was unaware of the situation. But now that he sees how bad it is, he understands why old Hans had been worrying so much. But the trusty butler corrected Rogers that he had discarded any semblance of worry not long ago. Hans has decided to fully and completely trust the young lord in anything he does. Even at this moment of uncertainty when Luke is nowhere to be found, he still believes that the young man is doing his utmost for the sake of his people. Back in the mines, Luke is struggling hard. It might not have worked before, but he has a good feeling about his next spell. With a much bigger and much more powerful dark flame, he targeted the great worm's orehead, exploiting the crack in its seemingly impenetrable defense. The young lord used up every bit of magic in his body for that last hit. He had to be caught by his golems as he fell after exhausting his gas. As the master of the mine explodes the afterlife, Luke playfully jabbed that he can't possibly handle another one of those freaky worms. But thanks to their wild fight and that beast going crazy, it looks like he might be able to save on manpower, as a lot of the ores have been dredged and dropped. Besides, they can just mine the precious ores that grew throughout the length of the worm. The young lord picked his torch back up and explored the rest of the mine. Not far from the battlefield, he saw the remains of a dwarf. Looking a little closer, he noticed some rare artifacts and a few pieces of well-made armor strewn around. There are signs that the dwarves tried to protect the mine. They wanted to fight for what they'd built. As a sign of respect, the young lord constructed a simple grave for the dwarven remains, hoping that it would be enough to honor their efforts. Now that the ancient dwarf has a proper resting place, his spirit can leave all the burdens and be at peace on the other side. Luke also hopes that the dead dwarf wouldn't mind that he took all of the stuff, from rare artifacts to dwarf-forged armor. He assured the departed souls of his former allies that his actions didn't mean he bore any ill intentions. The video ends here. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to receive updates on my next videos quickly and not miss any new content.